Dublab.
Welcome to the Quarantine Tapes, a daily podcast from Onassis, LA and dublab. Hosted by Paul Holdengräber, this series chronicles shifting paradigms in the era of social distancing.
Oh, Patton, Oswalt, I am so happy to be seeing you, and thank you so much for being part of the Quarantine Tapes. I'm truly delighted. This is my first. I mean, I've had one other. What is this? FaceTime.
One of the FaceTime one? Oh, wow.
I had one other FaceTime conversation for the Quarantine Tapes with someone who actually, there is something to talk about there. I spoke on FaceTime with William Gibson, and for him, and in a way I can jump in that way by saying for him it's extremely hard at this point to write science fiction. And I'm wondering if there isn't a similarity with our moment now. Isn't it hard to be funny?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I'm going to actually put the phone down. So
okay, no, but it was nice seeing you.
It was good seeing you too, man.
We both look very tired. Okay, I'm putting it down.
It's actually been challenging doing comedy, I think, ever since Trump got elected, only because instead of us finding the hidden absurd angle to reality, comedians have been relegated to just pointing at it and saying, please tell me I'm not the only one seeing this. Like, it's almost like now we've been reduced to begging the audience to confirm our suspicions about reality and how truly frightening and out of control it all seems, and how like aggressively incompetent the people in control are, so it almost feels like George Orwell was wrong in that the totalitarian regime would at least like to have the semblance of being in control. But now it's like the way they control us is they throw so much absurdity at us that we can't focus anymore.
So does it make your job harder in the sense that you have to try harder?
Well, not only do you have to try harder, but you think that you're pointing out something ridiculous, and a lot of times I'm worried that the audience is like, yeah, no kidding, that's already become the standard operating norm. Like, now what? Do you have anything else for us besides pointing at this insanity and going, can you believe this? That can't be the role of the comedian in the long run.
You know, someone who I feel, and I think you feel similarly, and I'd love you to tell me what you see in it. Someone I think is doing a really good job is Sarah Cooper, because all she's doing is repeating what we can't believe.
Well, but you know what's kind of amazing about what she's doing, and it was actually interesting. There's two aspects of this that are amazing. What she's doing, this is kind of weird. She's lip syncing his stuff as if she is calm and measured and in control, right, which makes what he's saying look crazier. And there are a couple of, obviously, the stuff is so popular because it deserves to be. She's a brilliant actress, and she conceives it so brilliantly. And now I've seen some conservative or MAGA pushback of people lip syncing some of Joe Biden's statements, but like all MAGA people, they don't understand how comedy works, and they're doing these really goofy, contorted faces and trying to make it seem like they're stupid or silly. It's like, no, you're missing the joke. Is that there's no point in doing Trump and doing a goofy face or contorting yourself. The text itself is so on a level of like Lewis Carroll. That is how absurd what he's saying. So to say that, look at how she stands. Look at her poise. She actually adds subtlety and control to where he doesn't have any of that. His arms flap around. There's no, it's all in. So the fact that she's going, do you see how ridiculous this would look even if Trump was someone with the appearance of competence?
Right.
Like, in a weird way, she has, I think, has highlighted how crazy this all is way better than people like reading back what he says or commenting on what he says. She's not commenting on anything.
Not a word. I mean, there isn't a, you know, because I've played them side by side, and maybe you want to explain to our audience what Sarah Cooper is doing.
Oh, yeah. Sarah Cooper is an actress and comedian who she takes real audio clips of Donald at his press conference talking about, you know, different medications, testing, how great a job America's doing. And she lip syncs it, but doesn't wear any makeup, doesn't do like a character thing where she tries to look like Trump. She looks like herself, this young African-American woman who is doing this. And what's also brilliant is she's doing, without hammering you over the head with it, she's doing a version of like the people around him who are trying to make him look good. In other words, you could almost argue that she's playing a character of someone who is pro-Trump and going, let's lip sync the stuff, but do it in a very thoughtful, serious manner. And then, of course, like everyone in Trump's circle, they don't realize that it makes him look even worse. Right. It's so genius on so many levels. I love it. Yeah, and it's amazing how even people who in the MAGA blogosphere or podcast sphere or live streaming sphere who normally make fun of and rip apart comedians who make fun of Trump, they kind of are leaving Sarah alone because it has nothing to do with her. It's just, I'm just repeating back exactly what he's saying. And she's edited. It's next level brilliance.
I think so too, and it reminds me of, you know, sometimes when I arrived in this country, I was always so amazed when people wanted to be ironic and make sure you understood. They would make, you know, quotation marks in the air, and here she is making quotation marks because she's simply quoting, and it's beautiful, and I've discovered with her only very recently, and really think she's excellent. Patton, what have you been doing for the last 3 months? Perhaps you can take me through your day to day. What's up?
Well, Friday, May 13th was the day that it was actually shut down. Remember that day? That was when it was on Thursday the 12th. I remember very clearly reading that, there's a stay-at-home order, there is a shelter-in-place order. So that's when it started. I started off, I bet like a lot of us, with very high-minded, I'm going to keep a plague journal. I'm going to note down what's going on. This is a weird historic moment. And then I have this queue of movies that I've DVR'd off of TCM. I've got all these DVDs I'm going to watch, books I'm going to read. And that went on for about a week. And then the existential dread set in, and it turned into, I'm going to be eating a lot of junk food and watching comfort films and rewatching movies I've seen a million times that I know that I already like, so that I can feel good. And you know what's really weird? I found myself I don't know what this says about me or about our situation. There are videos on YouTube where people go into massive, like blockbuster films, The Avengers or Fast and the Furious, and they will sneak in a cell phone and record the audience reacting to the big moments in the film, and then they'll cut it together in a little video of, it's live audiences reactions. I've been watching so many of these videos. It's almost the same way at the beginning of the movie, The Omega Man, when Charlton Heston is obsessively watching the movie Woodstock, because you can tell he just wants to look at the huge crowds of people because he misses that. And I miss being in the dark with strangers reacting to stuff.
It must be so hard. Yeah, it must be so hard. I mean, your existence is dependent on the laughter of others.
Well, not just the laughter of others, but the reactions of others.
Right.
Laughter obviously is the ideal, but also you're just as thrilled now by the stuff that goes wrong or the stuff that doesn't quite land. I find myself missing that stuff just as well. which I never thought I would miss. And there you go.
You know, Patton, I heard on the radio not long ago that one of the problems of the masks is that people now are having real trouble reading facial expressions. Now, this psychologist was on the radio the other day saying, you know, it's really interesting because people, generally speaking, are rather bad at reading facial expressions in general, but they miss the fact of not being able to misread facial expressions.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, wasn't there a syndrome going around a while back? A lot of moms that were getting Botox, their kids were suffering some psychological effects because when the mom would say, I love you, or, oh, sweetie, I miss you, but there was no facial cues because they had frozen their faces with Botox. And a lot of these kids were going, I can't trust.
That's so interesting.
My mom is saying, and I'm frightened by it.
That's so interesting.
And I wonder if that's also happening with people out there where, not only do you not see the full face, but what is being said to you, even if it's being said with deep emotion, is muffled.
Right.
And, you know, Turner Classic Movies has Silent Movie Sundays. And I was watching some of those, and really I was nostalgic for uncovered faces. No, there's no dialogue, but you know exactly what everyone in these movies is thinking and feeling, and you go, oh my God, I miss this so much.
I know. And, you know, I remember being on certain boards where the very people you're describing, I mean, they had been so stretched that I sometimes felt like asking them, could you please blink? You know, could you please? I mean, please help me. Now, what is so interesting in when I ask you what you're doing during a day and whether your days are monotonous, I'm gathering that one of the ways in which you find whether comfort or a way of passing the time is to watch a lot of movies, good and bad, and all kinds of movies. And I remember when we once spoke before, I had looked at the Silver Screen Fiend, and and I remember showing you actually a page of your schedule on a certain day where you went to see, I think, 6 movies or something, and you spoke about being addicted to film, and and so now tell me what have you been watching that is both good and despicable?
Well, here's what's strange, though. I've been watching... what I'm realizing is, even when I was in the throes of my movie addiction, it was about going into these theaters, but then coming back out into the world and working a job and being with people. When you have nothing but time for your hobbies then lose their meaning and lose the joy to them, because the hobby was there as a supplement to life. You know, a couple of glasses of wine with dinner is fantastic, but if you just drink a bottle of wine at dinner, after a while, the wine doesn't taste that good. No. You feel sick. There's no pleasure in it, and I'm kind of experiencing that a little bit with films. I'm experiencing, like, I have nothing but time to watch movies. So now the idea of carving out time to lose myself in a film, the thrill part of it is gone a little bit. When I turn the TV off, I won't have to be anywhere. I don't have to go, and, you know, I don't feel like, now I'm being, I wish I could watch another movie. I got to go do this other thing. You know, well, I don't have to anymore. And
there's no conflict. There's no conflict.
No, there's no conflict.
Right.
And I think that as a species, on a lot of levels, we do crave some conflict, because overcoming conflict is what helped us evolve and what led us to, you know, assured us when we were cavemen that we were doing okay and we were surviving. And you take away that conflict, and I think we all start to go a little crazy, because you don't know if you're alive anymore.
You know, I read a wonderful comment you made about Jerry Stiller. You wrote that he was on a Yoda level of comedic skill. And I'm wondering what, I mean, I had occasion to meet him once at the New York Public Library. I did a tribute to George Carlin, where Ben Stiller came, Whoopi Goldberg came, Louis C.K. came, Kevin Smith came. I remember George Carlin's daughter saying that the greatest moment in George Carlin's life was when he watched the Supreme Court having to repeat the 7 words you cannot say on television. I mean, he felt vindicated for his life. So I'm wondering the Yoda level of comedic skill for Jerry Stiller. What do you mean by that? And I imagine it's something you strive for.
Yeah, and what I strive for is to get beyond having to think about what you're doing anymore. I mean, obviously you still work hard, and I want to work hard at what I'm doing, but I want to work so hard and get to a level where there are things that I'm doing comedically that I'm not planning on doing, but I so trust in my skill simply because I've done it for so long that is where the real genius moments come out of. It was like, I remember Martin Scorsese talking about the old time studio directors like a Michael Curtiz. He worked in the studio system, but that meant he got to direct 3 or 4 movies a year, not like a movie every year or a movie every couple of years. He just would finish a movie and then do another one. And so he got to this level of competence where by the time he got to doing a movie like Casablanca, which is a masterpiece and it's great, but one of the reasons it's a masterpiece is because it was made by this guy who was so beyond the fear of having to overthink every single thing he was doing as an auteur. Mm. He could just walk in a room and go, I've made 6 movies in the last couple of years, so we're going to light it like this. We'll use this angle. That like he already knew all the stuff he had to do almost in shorthand. So it's like, as a comedian, I want to keep going up to the point where I don't need to think about. I can be absolutely present on stage and almost have those moments where I'm outside of myself and where moments where I'm as surprised as the audience is.
And now we're all stuck at home, and being outside of ourselves is difficult. Tell me, how is it being a father these days?
Being a dad is, it's interesting. I have to, you do have a lot more time with your kid, but it's also kind of heartbreaking only because I don't want to think about my 11-year-old daughter looking back on these months and what it may look like as it might be years now that she loses this crucial time when she should be 11 and bopping around with her friends and having fun, Right. That is what worries me. What is the psychological effect going to be on these kids? Not only of being stuck inside during a pandemic, but stuck inside where, like, it's hard to hide how awful and incompetent Trump is. And it's scary for little kids to grow up where there's another adult being horrible and the other adults in the room who should be there helping aren't doing anything to stop said person. And it makes, I wonder if that's going to make them feel like, well, I just don't trust anything. I don't trust adults. I don't trust reality. There was no one there. Someone should have stepped in and they just didn't. Right. When I'm at school, if I'm mean to someone, I rightfully get a timeout. I got to go, and this is a guy that is doing horrible things and no one punishes him and no one says anything. And I wonder what the long-term effects on this generation is going to be.
I wonder too, and I think there's also long-term effects on spending so much time, with your family, your wife, your husband, your lovers, whoever they may be. I'm curious, what is going to happen? Are there going to be many more babies in 9 months' time? Are people going to get to know each other? People are saying, I would like to spend more time with you, but I'm hearing from some people that saying, I'm not sure I necessarily wanted that.
Yeah, I want to be optimistic, but it's not a good sign that when the quarantine was lifted in Wuhan, the divorce rate went through the roof. So, I think that part of the health of relationship is guarding each other's solitude. Right. And it's very, very hard to guard each other's solitude when you're also exposed to each other nonstop all day. So we're out of balance right now, and that worries me.
Do you spend a lot of time reading the news?
No, I don't watch the cable news shows. There's a couple of, I want the blandest, most nuts and bolts factual reporting now, because everything now is so emotional and so soaked in doom that even though there is some stuff that we should be definitely panicking and worrying about, but when every single thing is soaked in doom, it brings you to a defensive helplessness where weirdly enough, in the face of all of this awfulness, you go, well, the most comforting thing in a creepy way is to absolutely give up. That, in a very messed up way, is a comforting thing to do. And I've been brought to that point a few times, and it's scary, and I don't think it's healthy.
No. I remember when we spoke last, we spoke about the sadness of the movie theater experience potentially being lost. And tell me about, even your reaction here.
Well, it's not even just the movie theater experience. It's the movie theater experience, the nightclub bar experience, the concert experience, the experience of being in a room full of strangers and you are all surprised and amazed momentarily at something that you connected with that nobody thought you were going to connect with. Sometimes not even the people who are putting on the show. It's the you're in a bar and everyone's having drinks, and maybe there's someone there that you wouldn't normally be friends with or wouldn't agree on, and then something else weird happens in the bar, and suddenly perfect strangers are kind of looking at each other going, can you fucking believe this shit? Like, those are those weird moments where everyone just kind of connects for a second, and you go home, maybe not necessarily hooking up with someone, but you've definitely hooked into humanity. And I think if we lose that, that's really, really dangerous in the long run.
I agree. I mean, and you recently hosted the Webby Awards from home. That must have been.
I mean, I did the best I could. I'm still, everyone, of course, you know that even though no one talks about it because it's so boring and no one wants to hear it, but everyone, I feel like, is scrambling to learn how to be their own broadcaster, how to be their own YouTuber, podcaster, whatever, just out of necessity now. In a lot of the arts. So there was a lot of technical clumsiness and fumbling on my part, because I'm just like, guys, I'm sorry, I don't have a teleprompter. I want to do a good job here, but I may have to look away from the screen. I don't have the infrastructure in my home to do this shit,
It's I mean, and one doesn't have an audience. One doesn't have the warmth of the audience. You were saying something in passing which made me think that all the stand-up comics and people in the arts, generally speaking, the only thing that will make them survive, if they're able, is to be utterly nimble, to reinvent themselves.
Yeah, to be gotta be a moving target now. There's good, and again, there's going to be people that use this new, the new delivery system and this new paradigm well. Sarah Cooper, I think, is an amazing example of that, of someone who has taken the form of TikTok and brought it to a genuinely artistic and brilliant level. And there's other people, that we're going to see. It's going to be the same transition from, like, the transition that went from silent films to sound films, from vaudeville to television, from it's just going to be from 1970s stadium rock to 1980s music video. There were people who were massive celebrities who then, once music videos became king, they didn't look good on camera, or they didn't they didn't care about making short films. And there were other people, Madonna's music was certainly fine, but she took this new medium and just skyrocketed herself where other people couldn't. So it's going to just depend on who is willing. It's just constantly, you adapt or die.
Right.
And that's what people get wrong about evolution. It's not the survival of the fittest or the strongest. It's survival of the ones who are willing to adapt the most.
That's right.
Those are the ones who survive in the long run.
You've said about your stand-up comedy that I'm always trying to tie whatever I'm doing with something larger or cosmic.
Yeah.
And larger or cosmic, I think the quotation I read back to you of yours, it couldn't be more opportune for our moment now. It's certainly there's something quite large and something quite cosmic. So what do you think about your statement in light of what we're living through now?
Well, I mean, it definitely has to do with the mundane things that you're doing every day that you think are so, people sewing masks, people delivering food are literally now life or death for your fellow human beings. So hopefully, maybe people will look at this and go, the little so seemingly drudgy tasks that we do every day aren't drudgery at all, that they are crucial and that they are there to keep people alive. And, hopefully that'll be something that people look at and reconsider. And also we'll look at other people where the guy collecting the garbage and the woman who is a hospice caregiver are keeping the world from fucking crumbling, basically. Right. That there is no such, I really wish they would get rid of these terms, essential and non-essential workers, because
I wish they got rid of so many terms that we're just sort of we're beginning to speak the very language that has been given to us that is so wrong-headed.
Oh man, yeah. And although again, I think that and I'm trying to be positive, the term essential and non-essential workers, I think just to the public consciousness, without people like us saying that we think it's ridiculous, I think people saw very quickly how ridiculous that is.
Right.
But someone who greets you at a Walmart and tells you where to go get hardware supplies or food is an essential person that is needed, that is desperately needed. And every job has dignity and respect and needs to be treated that way.
I think of your daughter and that time you were saying that you're afraid she might have lost and the trauma it might cause. But at the same time, Patton, and I know that certain horrible situations then become stories.
Yeah, that's true. But also, but in the far balance of things, though, I think people would rather have a pleasant life than to have one cool story. Like when people were telling me, like, man, you're going to miss George Bush when he isn't president. I'm like, I will give back the 10 minutes of material that I got if we weren't torturing people, and if our money wasn't on fire. That wasn't worth my stupid comedy. Like, I'm never going to comfort someone by going, think of the stories you'll be able to tell your grandchildren.
Of course not.
I don't think anyone living through the Depression was going, the stories are
Of course not. Of course. Yeah. What? Tell me, what makes you laugh these days?
My friends. I call up my friends. I'm very fortunate. All my friends are comedians. So I get to, when I do Zoom calls or text people, they're all comedians and they're all being goofballs. It's so I'm very, very lucky in that. And then also, people like Sarah Cooper, people like Vic Berger and Randy Rainbow that, are it's very, very comforting in the depths of despair to have someone just going, but this is still absurd. Like, can we at least, when I was going through the depths of my grief and, when my wife passed away, one of the things that got me through it was the Eric Andre show on Adult Swim, the most brainless, like defiantly brainless, nonsensical, genius program I've ever seen. And I was like, and I need this so bad. I need absolute, just silliness. No rhyme or reason. I need it, because that means that we're living life again. Life should be, the best parts of life are when, we got together, we had no plans, we're all just goofing around, a bunch of fun stuff happened, there was no agenda to it, we're just, we're all out there acting like idiots. Like, those are all the times you'll remember from your friends. It's just the times when you were all comfortable enough to be completely idiotic with each other.
Patton, The only part I regret about our conversation is how quickly time goes by.
Oh.
And gosh, I love talking to you, and I send you for now a virtual hug, and I can't wait to give you a real one when we can do such things. But
Paul, I'm serious. When this thing is lifted, we are going to go get coffee or something and just yammer about everything.
Please,
all right?
please. It's a date. It's a date. It's a deal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being part of this, and take good care. Stay safe.
I'll try. You too, man. Okay.
Thank you so much. Be well.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
To support this show and Dublab's progressive programming, go to dublab.com/support.